Salut tout le monde et bienvenue sur oakinvest. Nous sommes toujours au Proof of Talk, c'est le deuxième jour aujourd'hui et aujourd'hui nous allons accueillir Beniamin Mincu qui est le CEO de MultiversX, anciennement connu comme Elrond. Et on va poser quelques questions que la communauté française a déjà beaucoup posées sur Twitter. On va parler de quelques controverses, quelques idées qui ont été évoquées en tout cas sur le réseau. Welcome Beniamin.
It's really great to be here and love to have this conversation.
Thank you for your time. So the idea behind this interview is to talk about some points that were discussed over the social media that people have questions about.
Sure.
And we have discussed it before. That's where it originated from. So let's start by the decentralization. So first, the community. So we know that you have a really strong community in France. Are you trying to achieve the same level of involvement in other countries, or is France your priority right now?
So the French community is remarkable, very resourceful, high energy people that are focused on building, contributing, coming with solutions. We always appreciate this, wherever it may be. Incidentally, of course, as we've grown with Elrond and now with MultiversX, beside Romania and some other countries in Europe, of course, France has been very strong and one of the largest contributor to what has been happening in the ecosystem. So it definitely is a great priority. Of course, here we collaborate with a lot of people like Owen with their Maria, with staking providers and all of that, but then also a lot of remarkable community projects that are building on MultiversX, a lot of remarkable ambassadors and community people. And we definitely have a plan to systematically expand in other countries, in Europe, but then also in the US and Asia. But we all want to take this one step at a time, in the sense that for each country, there's almost a bit of a different language, a bit of a different conversation. But for France, of course, even with X-Day, we've achieved some things that usually for most companies may never happen in their entire lifetime. Having the ministers, having some super relevant and important people. And we believe we're just at the start. There's a lot of space to go and still improve things.
Okay, and so recently you have, there has been some trouble in the US, especially with the SEC, with Gary Gensler basically suing everyone and telling that your body is a security. So EGLD was one of the tokens that got delisted from Binance US recently. How did it affect you?
So interestingly enough, the problem with the US, I think, has been remarkably bad for the community. The entire community has responded and so forth, specifically on Binance US. This was just a message that was initially posted, but then deleted because the community got involved and we discussed with Binance. So it did not get delisted.
Okay.
And it was changed almost immediately during the same day. I'm not aware of the reason for why they may have done this, but at the end of the day, this has not happened. And this is even better. I would expect that they will do some changes just on some assumptions based on what the SEC has done. So suppose that the SEC says, if X, Y, and Z layer ones are essentially securities, then all layer ones are securities. I don't think this is the case. I don't think this is right. And the entire framing for everything we have seen on the legal system in the US suggests that there's ample evidence to contest such an idea. But this may have been a point on Binance US just trying to maybe restrict a lot of stuff, but then it has immediately changed. And at the end of the day, it's much better that it still moves in the right direction.
Okay. Still talking about the decentralization. Today, the foundation of Elrond is highly involved. So, for example, the biggest DEX that you have had since the beginning, you are the ones developing it. On the other hand, you had Jungle DEX, which is now merged into the original DEX that you're developing. Do you think that it's a problem for the decentralization, the decision-making of the protocols, and basically like the whole blockchain is based around the foundation?
No, The key point that we're trying to look at is that this entire conversation is almost like you're trying to build a Lego set with which you can build almost anything. But at first, of course, you might say, how do I get the first Lego pieces? It's easy after I have the entire Lego set to then build a robot, build a car, build a rocket, and so forth. But if I have just two pieces, of course, I cannot build too much. So what I want to clarify is, at this point, each of the products that are being built on MultiversX are being built by separate independent teams. Of course, the foundation has an involvement because the foundation is basically the steward of the protocol, in the sense that it wants the protocol to move forward, it wants to evolve, expand. Now, how does this change? Well, there has been a phase where the foundation had to build the first DEX just because no one else did. Now, once you have the first DEX, incidentally, you have another 20 DEXs. Incidentally, you have a lot of expansion in the DeFi space and so forth. Is the initial DEX more as necessary now as it was at that point? Certainly not. This is precisely why, if you look at the DEX exchange has changed in a very apparently nuanced but actually very significant way, in the sense that what has happened with the Jungle DEX is now the X exchange has a decentralized, fully permissionless way of onboarding any token. It does not need approval. You have, as a community, this very rapid flywheel, which you can experiment. This is also problematic because some scammers might come. You still need to educate the community and so forth. But we're now at the point where there is a path for any project to start playing, onboarding and so forth. Can this go much further, where there's governance? Certainly. This is what's being basically released now. I would expect in the next few weeks, where the community gets much more involved on what gets listed, what should be prioritized, what should be done. Is this the natural step forward that actually brings us close to, for almost every product that is open source, even the protocol and so forth? Certainly. This is why governance comes live on the protocol as well. And there will be a kind of Agora module where discourse is happening, where proposals can happen, where people can engage. But we want it to always be also pragmatic. This is not the point of just setting governance, but no one does anything. Who are the people who are building? We very much listen to the builders, get the feedback, try to engage in these conversations. And I think the X exchange is just one example of what has happened, because if you look at all the DEXs in the space, now when you have a open source module that you can copy, modify, and create a different flavor of course, then you're free to do 100 better versions and the community will immediately adapt it. This is the best version of actually achieving decentralization, because it's not only an independent team, but then when you have 5 DEXs and each of them competes for the community, delivering better things, the community is at the end of the day in the best position possible, and this is what we're trying to achieve.
And so you're talking about governance. Today you hold, the foundation still has tokens. So will you take part in the voting, because it can influence a lot what is happening on the chain with the protocol? So do you think that you will take part in this vote, or only sometimes? How would it work?
I think it will very much depend on the situations. We start in this standpoint with a, again, very pragmatic skin in the game situation. If you just start from the philosophical point, then you're usually stuck in some loop, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Is it enough of this? What do people think? At the end of the day, what we want to say is decentralization doesn't mean you don't have leads. Decentralization means a multiplicity of leaders. So whereas people usually say, no, there should not be any leader, what we say is there should be several very smart leaders, as we see in the community, that come with ideas, viewpoints, debate these different ideas. And as soon as you reach a better conclusion, this is decentralization at its best. It's usually not done right in the normal ecosystems. And the foundation will continue to play this role of the steward, in the sense that if we see that like the best version of things is tomorrow someone does something better than anything we've done. I wish this. I wish for 5 years. We have not seen it yet. We have, on the other hand, seen many really resourceful builders take something and improve it tremendously. And then the community loves that. We support it. We want more people like this. But this always comes one step at a time. Once you have a super solid and robust foundation on the performance and technical side, then you can almost beat all the other elements on the product side just because you leverage this very solid foundation.
And the foundation has tokens. So for example, we see that the Ethereum Foundation sells tokens to pay its developers. What are you using your tokens for? Is it only to pay the team or incentivize builders? How do you use the tokens?
The key point of a protocol is almost that it can be seen as a country. So you start a country and it's much simpler to understand. How do you build some of the infrastructure in the country? How do you build some of the products or utility in the country? For everything, you essentially need resources. Now, the greatest part of blockchains and the economics that's built on top of them is that what we essentially encourage is not only incentives for the network, for open source modules, for contributions, for developers, for builders, and offer both technical support and resources in various stages. So we have a launch pad, we have an incubator, we have venture capitalists that invest at different stages, and then we want to support every flywheel. I do believe that there's a bias that's mistaken in the normal crypto space where people just believe that by throwing some money at a problem, it will magically get solved. So you have all these farmers that just take money, don't really build anything, and then move to the next protocol. We've been a bit more hardcore and intentional about this. This is what the best builders actually love. They are not discouraged by this, but they take it as a personal challenge. And what happens is, if you look at some of the builders, they're perhaps 10 levels above builders in the other ecosystems just because they've been through a lot of hardcore stuff. They learn the stuff. And when they have the product, the entire ecosystem is ready to invest, participate, and move forward in a way that makes much, much better sense. So at the end of the day, it's the key question that you want to focus on is what's the simplest, best way or optimal way to make sure that the protocol has adoption at largest scale possible. If there's a better way, I'm always curious to discover it. Always open, and this is why we have the conversations with the community. It seems at this point that open source modules with open source builders, with startups, and some very focused, let's say, almost business initiatives that are targeted toward users, toward businesses, toward, let's say, the metaverse and so forth, are the different paths that you want to play with at the same time or simultaneously.
So before Elrond became MultiversX, there was a question like, Elrond was a cool name. It reminds you of Lord of the Rings. And your rebranding came a little bit after what Facebook did as well, about what like some other companies were trying to play on, basically saying, hey, we are doing a metaverse, we're doing whatever you want to call it. Do you think that some people might have perceived that as a play to increase the token price once you've announced it?
What I believe is that all the people that are, let's say, looking and relevant to the conversation at first had a moment of trying to make sense of it, because it definitely is a lot to take in. Like, what's happening? How is this just a product of Elrond? How does this relate? But when you zoom out and look at things once the dust settles, you look at MultiversX as this idea of positioning what we're building at the epicenter or confluence of several technologies, where it's blockchain that we believe will continue to shape society during the next decade, whether it's the metaverse with spatial computing and the different versions, because here you may have observed we're taking a very different approach than Meta or some of the other projects or companies, or artificial intelligence, which again, I believe will be a very fundamental force to what's happening. The key point is this technology, at it taken to its conclusion, is so vast and large that it will not be a universe. It will be a multiverse of possibilities. And the idea with the X is that it functions both as this fundamental compression of an idea of growth, because it's the compression of power. Like, the question is, how do you express the idea of growth in the most mathematical and rigorous way, where it's powers? You say power of 2, power of 15, whatever. So X is growth. It means that it can be anything. And then it's also a bridge between worlds, a bridge from the blockchain space to the physical world, to the interactions with businesses, users, and all of that that we're bringing with the different products. So in that sense, of course, we love Elrond. Elrond will forever be super cool, and it will be there forever. But now is a point of moving to a much larger landscape, a much larger conversation that we believe is not only large, but positioned very, very fundamental and at the epicenter of the exciting things that we believe will continue to shape society.
So lots of people have said that the only thing that they are seeing from MultiversX is marketing, and then they are not seeing like the technical side, like the innovation, the technology behind it. So what do you have to say about that?
I mean, the largest part of the community has been critiquing us for quite the opposite thing, in the sense that they've said, this is the most robust technical architecture in the space. Everyone who has the eyes can look at it because it's open source, performance, all the metrics are there, and it's outstanding, but you're not doing marketing. You're not doing enough marketing. Please do more marketing. So hearing this critique for the first time, as we were discussing even before, is in some sense surprising, in some sense funny. But at the end of the day, what I translated into is we definitely can do a much better job in summarizing, compressing, and simplifying what we're doing, outlining both the technical part very, very well across the entire ecosystem, and then at the same time speaking a very different language than the technical discussion for the simple user. Because up until this point, what we've been known in the entire space has been, okay, these guys from Elrond and MultiversX, they're really good, really hardcore on the technical part, but can they escape this narrow niche of people where it's just technical people discussing about technical stuff, in order to reach a different market? Because as we've discussed today in our conversation before, if we only discuss to the people we have right now, this is a zero-sum game. It won't go where we really want it to go. If we learn to articulate the technical stuff very well, very sharp, such that anyone can verify it, because this is the beauty of open source technology, but then can also compellingly articulate how it benefits the different users, such that whether it's X-Portal, X-Fabric, X-World, they can interact with the technology immediately and have this aha moment of what the blockchain might bring, then I think we'll have an even larger and more exciting conversation than the one we have right now, especially in the current markets.
I think that maybe in France, people have seen most of the marketing from Owen and from other media companies as well. So there might be this part that
a different bias.
Yeah. Because on your Twitter, you communicate in English. People don't really understand it. We might need
a different translation.
Yeah, exactly. A translation in French for people that like follow you, and maybe to emphasize on the technical side for the people who are more into the space rather than the
I would encourage even everyone, and this will do right now. We have published a new document that's called Hypergrowth, with the entire chapter of everything we're building at MultiversX, putting all the puzzle pieces together setting the broader context of how blockchain and AI will interplay, outlining the protocol strategy with all the different releases that are coming with, for instance, zero knowledge proofs, with staking phase 4, with governance modules that are new and so forth, with sovereign shards, all of that, really cool things. But then also open source modules, all of them which are open, playable, usable by the community, new products and the ecosystem with the different initiatives. Now, what we'll intentionally do, because here we outline both the technical layer and the product and business and marketing layers, we'll translate this into many languages, and French will be one, and we'll also intentionally do an effort on the weekly MultiversX thread I was mentioning, where we openly share what's being worked on, considered, researched, and so forth by the developer community, specifically to have this kind of not only transparency, but engagement with the community. We've been doing this for 3 years, which is almost crazy to state out loud. And this is why the people that are not, let's say, perhaps only French, or have not only discovered us through Owen or so forth, can see, can read. I still hope that most people read it in English because it's simpler, but we'll do some efforts to make sure that the message is conveyed in the right way.
Okay, nice. It's nice to hear.
100%.
So today you are the face of Elrond. You are the CEO of MultiversX. You're one doing interviews, going to places, etc. Do you think that in the long term you will distance yourself from this role to give the governance and like decision making and everything to?
Sure. I have already begun this, and I will encourage the entire community to read the document I was mentioning before, both on governance, on the different modules, how it ends. And if you just take a look at my Twitter, I'm basically just a MultiversX builder as anyone else. I'm like, incidentally, I have played different roles, gathered the team, pushed for different things and so forth. But at the end of the day, I'm really a MultiversX builder. Anyone who is a builder has a voice, can make their voice heard. And this is how the document ends, because the document is not pushed by the CEO or by someone else. It's pushed by the entire community, in a sense where this represents a distillation of what we together are trying to achieve, what the community feels is the right path forward. And this process has already begun, in the sense that, as I was mentioning before, decentralization doesn't mean an absence of leaders, but it means a multiplicity of leaders. Smart people who have thoughtful approaches that can add and contribute value. I believe now the right moment has come for this type of conversation, and we've begun it for all the people who have seen the nuances. They can see this in the products, they have seen this in the protocol discussions and so forth. They can see this even in the, let's say, positioning of things. And I think the community loves and embraces and will contribute to this path a lot.
And also, I would like to give my own opinion, because I've met you during the talk. I was the moderator of the panel, and we've talked a little bit. Sure. And the thing is, the only things you have asked me, it wasn't like, yeah, Elrond is the best. You were asking me, hey, what have you noticed in France? What was the feedback from people? What are the bad things that people are saying? What are the good things? What do you like the most about Elrond? Have you used Elrond? You're talking about like the adoption stuff. And so I think this is like an approach of someone who actually cares and tries to improve. And that's all. I gave you the feedback that I have seen on social media. So I think for every project there is more way to grow.
Sure.
And I think staying put with the people and asking these questions is something important. And so this is also why we decided to do this interview, basically to respond to all the controversies, whatever you want to call it. But
yeah, this is just growing pains, especially given current markets, given a lot of changes. I think a lot of the conversation for us has been during the last 5 years about reinvention. You might say that this is the progress is a very linear path. It never is. Whatever you're trying to do, even if you're trying something super simple, you basically need to go all around the world, do a lot of things, and then reach a conclusion that might bring you one step closer, not 100 steps. And so we will constantly look for new things, for feedback, for ideas, for really resourceful people that contribute, and constantly reinvent things. Whatever we understand, whatever the community understands and captures things, I think will be extraordinary. I will also say that if you look even at the last 2 months, last 1 month, the MultiversX community has leveled up tremendously. We have some people that are, for the first time, much more eloquent than almost anyone else on different subjects, which I love and commend. People from France, people from other places of the world, US, Europe, and so forth. This is the right kind of movement. When I see this, then I can say I'm just a builder. This is how things really move forward. And the hyper-growth plan we have in place will just ignite this even more and gives a lot of, let's say, bullets and arms to the community to make this revolution a reality.
And I have one last question for you, which is the one we ask to all the people that come to do interviews with us. So today we're a media which covers real estate, stocks, crypto, geopolitics, etc. And so the idea that we have is that we have different people coming in from different backgrounds, and we would like to understand where you invest today. So it can be real estate, it can be Rolexes, it can be wine, it can be stocks, it can be crypto, whatever it is. It's not a financial advice, and that's what we push for, but just we are trying to understand where people put their money.
This is always a funny question, because the first thing that comes to mind is prefacing the conversation to, hey, invest very thoughtfully, smart, only what you can afford to lose. But then if I speak for myself, I've basically invested not only time and money, but my entire life in MultiversX, in the sense that I do believe that this will be the impact through which will bring a lot of good to society. Will it have also financial implications? 100%. I think this is what the people understand. But I've tried to only make it intentional that if I discover something that's good, beneficial to this plan of making MultiversX even more widespread, even if it might be useful in 5 years, I might invest right now. Even if people don't understand, I don't discuss about some of the things, but you can assume that we have plans for the next year, some plans for years 3, 5, and so forth. How might they look? What interesting assets or places or spaces might contribute to bringing this technology to the physical world, to this new metaverse space, artificial intelligence, and so forth? That's a fascinating conversation, but what I can say is all focus and energy and resources have generally been put on making this a reality. The rest will sort of work out by itself. It will be footnotes. I won't care too much about the other stuff if this thing really works out as I want it to work out, and all the people are doing this.
And so you have not invested in anything else besides that?
100% I have. What I was saying is I have only in things that are subordinate or related or can accelerate in some sense the technology, the adoption, whether it's different types of technologies that take this and put it into practice in different segments, whether it's real world stuff that might implement the technology and take it into practice, whether it's all the investments that we've done on the banking space. We have an e-money license, we have a payment processor. We've approached things very, very differently if you look at the protocols, precisely because we've not been bound by the, let's say, you're in this box and this is just the only thing you're trying to do. We've been thinking from first principles, like what's the most compelling way to bring widespread adoption globally for this technology. And this will entail new technologies that we invest in. This will entail even spaces in the world where maybe we explore with cities, with interactions, the discussions that we've been having in several countries in some form or another. This may also entail technologies that have not been discussed about, like genetics and things like that. You can just imagine that I very curiously look at all these technologies and always try to figure out how they fit. Is there a way to supercharge adoption in a way that's exciting? And if I conclude yes, then I definitely do it and find a way to align things.
Okay. Well, Beniamin, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure having you. I think you're a genuine guy, and yeah, keep building and prove the doubters wrong. That's the only thing I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Really great to be here.